On debate, Senator Bellemare. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I rise today to speak in favor of the amendment. I won't speak for very long because I do have, I found Senator Ringuette's speech very convincing. I understand the purpose of Bill S-236, and I also understand why several senators supported it. The existence of two regions for PEI is an anomaly that dates back to 2014. Prior to 2014, there was only one region for this province. And in the context of this bill, many have said that the creation of these two regions is the result of steps taken by some certain people in the other place. And that is how PEI ended up being divided into two regions. Several people have pointed out this anomaly, and it also seems, according to the Labour Commissioner, that four regions would have been created at that time, and fairly spontaneously and fairly arbitrarily. So I understand that many honourable senators want the government to end the two regions. Why? Because it creates all kinds of inequalities, inequities, and incongruities. And as you know, a person is eligible for EI because of where they live. So two people working for the same company who live in the two different regions may be entitled to different amounts for a different number of weeks. So it's something to consider, and it's probably worth it wanting to change the situation. However, I'm rather sympathetic to what Senator Simon stated at committee, that it's not really the Senate's role to micromanage, because that's really what this is, micromanaging, if we're asking to amend the Employment Insurance Act's schedule. So it's not up to us to do that. We may point out anomalies, but it's not really up to us to make the changes. It's up to the government. I am also quite sensitive to Senator Ringuette's words, who eloquently stated, following the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report, who stated that they had calculated that merging the two regions would reduce benefits by $76.6 million between 2021 and 22 and 2025 and 2026, which is quite a lot of money that the people of PEI would not receive according to the PBO. So I'm sensitive to that argument as well. Thirdly, the government has promised EI reform, which is underway, and that reform should be substantial. And that would be the right time, in my opinion, to correct this anomaly, and also hopefully to review the complexity of the current EI system. Because let's not stick our heads in the sand. The EI system is incredibly complex. There are 66 administrative regions in Canada, and according to the region one lives in and the rate associated with that region, each person has different windows to become eligible. And once they're eligible, the length of the benefits is also different. There are charts that have 29 lines multiplied by 11 columns, which is over 400 different boxes that any given Canadian can fit in when it comes to EI eligibility. So that must be corrected. I don't know any other country that makes the region one lives in a criterion for EI eligibility. Sometimes it may be a person's age or income threshold, but never have I seen anywhere else regional eligibility. What we should recall is that this whole regime that we currently have comes from a reform that took place in 1996, the Axworthy reform, which had pros and cons. And at that time, we have to admit that employment insurance aimed to manage unemployment. It was a period in the mid-1990s. And I recall, because we should remember this, at that time, monetary policy had a huge impact on Canada's economic activity. The monetary policy, which worked in the same way as it does today, aimed for an unemployment rate, a certain unemployment rate. But at that time, the monetary policy's target was the natural unemployment rate. They were so afraid of inflation that the bank's radar included the non-accelerated inflation rates, and so we're talking about a rate of 8%, an unemployment rate of 8% for Canada, a global unemployment rate, which was the rate from which interest rates would increase. So if there was the natural unemployment rate reached 8%, the Bank of Canada would tighten its monetary policy and increase rates. Let's recall that mortgage rates at that time were extremely high. So if you have an unemployment rate of 8%, which is the target, imagine what the unemployment rate would be in some regions. It becomes extremely high in the Maritimes and lower elsewhere. So there were disparities, and there continue to be disparities according to the region. So today, the problem is different for several reasons, including an aging workforce, which is inevitable. Even if we are in a recession, or will be, we will see an increase in the unemployment rate, but it will probably be lower than it would have been in the past because of the aging workforce that we have. So a recession may encourage people to retire sooner, and the unemployment rate will increase, but not as dramatically as it had in the past. Today, with technological changes that are also rapid, where people often change jobs, and I repeat, an aging population, we are experiencing a labor shortage. So to that end, employment insurance needs to be reformed in order to deal with these problems of labor shortages. So I would invite the committee tasked with reviewing, should the amendment be accepted, that the committee will be reviewing the bill S-236. So I would invite the committee to also review it in light of the next reform and what the committee could suggest over and above the government's employment insurance reform. Thank you. That's what I had to say.
Senator Patterson, did you wish to ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Bellemare, voulez-vous?
Senator Bellemare, would you take a question? Absolutely, Senator.
Senator Bellemare, since 2014, the House of Commons committees have twice recommended a restoration to one EI zone for PEI. And you've talked about reforming the EI system. But out of respect for Prince Edward Islanders, let's not confuse their specific issue with the larger matter of EI reform you've advocated. Is it not the role of the Senate to work on behalf of our regions and address issues of regional interest first?
Senator Bellemare.
Senator Bellemare? I agree, Senator Patterson, but given the PBO's report, is there a problem? Can people hear the interpretation? So, as I was saying, in light of the PBO's report, which calculates that PEI, following merging of the two regions, would receive fewer benefits. So the impact with the multiplying effect in the region, it's not very useful in terms of spurring growth. So I suppose in the current context, all we can do is wait. That is my response.
Answer, Senator Bellemare. I'm not sure about the accuracy of the statistics from the PBO, because in 2021, the 8th Annual Report on Child and Family Poverty on Prince Edward Island highlighted that the federal riding of Charlottetown, which is smaller than the EI zone of Charlottetown, has the highest rate of both child poverty, 25%, and the highest rate of poverty of people of working age, 24.4%, in Prince Edward Island. By contrast, the westernmost riding of Egmont, which is entirely in the PEI-EI zone, has 19.4% rate of child poverty and a poverty rate of persons of working age of 14.7%. So this is the discrepancy you spoke about in ensuring access of benefits to the working poor in Charlottetown due to requiring 700 qualifying hours compared to 560 hours in the PEI zone. So the authors of that report recommended that the federal government end immediately the division of VI on PEI into two zones, thereby ending that disparity that currently exists among EI recipients in this province. In light of this information from the Annual Report on Child and Family Poverty 2021, would you not conclude that passing S-236 actually benefits the working poor in PEI, given that the highest rates of poverty are in the Charlottetown EI zone? Should we not listen to the subject matter experts on Prince Edward Island?
Senator Bellemare.
Senator Bellemare, thank you for the question. Senator Patterson. I knew that I should expect a question from you as to the rates of poverty rates. I didn't have time to study that aspect in detail, but it's not up to me to do so. That is why there is an amendment during which the PBO's report can be reviewed, and you'll have ample opportunity to study this problem of poverty and ask the question that is really associated with the number of weeks and the rates and the benefits. But what we do know is that the unemployment rate in 2022 across PEI is 8.3%, whereas in the region of Charlottetown it's 7.3%, and across PEI it's 8.7%. So if we say 8.3 as an average, it's a slight improvement, but I'm not quite certain that the difference in the rate between 8.3, 8.7 and 7.3 is truly significant. It will be up to you to decide and then report back to this chamber after the committee has done its review.
To ask Senator Bellemare a question, if she will kindly accept.
Oui, absolument, sénatrice.
Of course. Senator Bellemare, your interest in EI and EI reform is well known in this chamber. I was struck by Senator Ringette's interventions and her conversations with the two EI commissioners who were less than completely forthcoming, perhaps because the question was not asked directly or indirectly, I'm not able to say. You have a bill before this chamber, and your proposal is to create an advisory council to the EI Commission. Do you believe that the presence of such an advisory council would have helped the two EI commissioners answer the questions more fulsomely? So that's mine.
Senator Bellemare, thank you for your question. Senator Omidvar. Well, the advisory council that I am proposing would be a committee, or a council rather, that would indeed help the current commission to do its work by commenting, reflecting, proposing. And it would also have a mandate to initiate, so it could receive requests from outside to do its own analyses and provide them to commissioners. In my bill, the commissioners would be stakeholders, would be part of this advisory committee. The purpose would to be able to come up with common solutions for identified problems. We will be able to discuss this in detail, I hope, dear colleagues, when we debate my bill.